Hello, everybody. If you are new here, my name is Aubrey. My baby's just waking up. She is moving. Well, today's video is all about her, so. I show you a little angel, baby. Alright, so today's video is going to be my birth story. I am going to give a heads up that if you want, I shouldn't say it's not positive, but I should say if you're going unmedicated, I should say, if you're going into an induction and you want to go unmedicated, I don't even know if those things are correlated with what I'm going to say, but for me, it was a little traumatizing. I'm just going to say that. If you're giving birth soon and you have a dead set plan of what you want to do, maybe not watch this. But it obviously didn't traumatize me that bad because I already look back at pictures and I'm like, I want to be pregnant again. So it cannot be that bad. Let's start with my pregnancy. I was diagnosed I was probably around 30 some weeks. I got diagnosed with chronic hypertension, which is high blood pressure. Chronic means it was through your whole pregnancy. Gestational, I think, means only after 20 weeks. That might be wrong. Don't yell at me if that is not correct. But anyway, so I was seeing a high-risk doctor every single week after that. Measure baby and make sure everything was looking good. No problems. They said for the first signs of something going wrong, you would see it in baby first. So we were keeping a close eye on baby, but we did not know the gender. That was a surprise. Spoiler alert, it was a little girl, but and mind you, she was measuring big. I think at my 36 weeks, she was measuring 7'13" at my 36 weeks. And another thing that goes into this is that my insurance swapped at January 1st. So I had to change providers. And mind you that she was measuring big. And my first due date was January 8th. And then they ended up pushing it back to January 18th because she was a slow grower in the beginning stages. But if you hear her, she's directly behind you guys. So my first provider that I had all the way up until 38 weeks was going to induce me at 39 weeks just because she was measuring so big. So January 1st, we got all the insurance stuff figured out. And then January 1st, I think I went in January 2nd to my new OB that I got transferred over. And I did a non-stress test and I met with the OB and she pretty much said, yep, we're going to induce you tonight if you're available. And I was like, whoa, what is going on? And I was mentally not prepared for that. I wasn't. I said, hold on. Can we at least get a couple days? So I went in on Friday and we ended up going in on Sunday to get induced. So on Sunday rolls around. Well, she wanted to induce me because my blood pressure was high and the baby was measuring 7'13" 2 weeks ago already. And if you don't know, babies gain like a pound every 2 weeks. So in the last trimester, I think, or at least 30 to 40, whatever. She's excited back there. Anyway, So she said, "I don't really understand why we're not getting induced, why we're waiting." I'd rather have a vaginal birth than have to have a C-section. So she said, "I'd rather just get you in and get this baby out as soon as possible." So Sunday rolls around, we got ready and whatever. I originally was very against induction just because I was scared that I wanted to go unmedicated. I wanted to go fully unmedicated, and I knew that induction Pitocin contractions hurt a lot more. She's staring into my soul, kicking. Pitocin contractions hurt a lot more, and I didn't know if I was ready for that. That I had to get her out. So I went about it, and I didn't want anything going wrong with her, so I'm like, and at that last few weeks, I was so miserable. I was so big. I gained over 60 pounds. Anyway, so we went in on Sunday around 10, and they started we got all the paperwork done, and they started my IV. They got my IV in, and then we chilled about, you're funny, until about 3. And then at 3, they were like, "Do you want to get the Foley balloon and get this process started?" And I'm like, "Absolutely. I want to get in and out of this hospital as fast as I can. I'm a homebody. I did not want to stay at the hospital." As I put that Foley balloon in, and I kid you not, that was one of the worst things I felt in my entire life. That thing put so much pressure in my butt and on my tailbone that it was awful. Like, brutal. I still say that was the worst part about my whole experience, is that Foley balloon. And now I could have had them remove it. They were like, "That's totally fine," but once again, I want to get in and out of there. So I'm like, I'm suffering through this pain. I don't care. So at about 11, they came and checked. I think it was about 11. I'm kind of like in and out at this point. So at 11, I think they finally came and took it out. And that dilated me to a 3. It never fell out, but they took it out at 3. So that dilated me to a 3. And then I think they left me for a couple hours. So they left me for a while just to labor, and by this point my contractions were not very they weren't very consistent. They were not painful. So they kept upping it to get them consistent, and then when they did, it was like having contraction after contraction, so they had to lower it. And then there was a thing where it was called coupling, I think it's called, where there's 2 contractions back to back without getting a rest before coming all the way back down. And that meant she was sunny side up. So I spent a couple hours trying to flip her. So eventually that did work. It did flip her. But then the OB came back in, checked me, still was at a 3. This was a couple hours later. And I think they ended up breaking my water around like 1-ish, I want to say. And once again, I was like, I do not want my water broke until at least like 6-7 centimeters, because that was another thing, that once your water breaks, contractions hype up. So, and if you want to go medicated, probably should wait. So anyway, after they broke my water, which they did say my water, I had a tremendous amount. I had a tremendous amount of water. Like, the doctor and the nurses, they said they have never seen anybody with that amount of water, which my whole body was full of water. I just like held so much water in me when I was pregnant. Like, my fingers were numb at 20 weeks just because there was lack of circulation, and it was another whole deal. After they broke my water, they checked me again, still was at a 3, so they let me labor on. And eventually my contractions were getting pretty consistent, and they were getting pretty painful. I want to say they came in another like 3 hours later and checked me, and I was still at a 3. And I was like, they asked me if I wanted pain meds or whatever, and I was like, nope. So I denied them. Then I waited until like they came in, and I think at 9 o'clock again. At 9 o'clock, and they checked me again, and I was still at a 3. So by this point, I was mentally done. I did not want the epidural, but I did not I knew. I was literally screaming to my mom and Joe. I was like, this baby is not coming out. This baby is so up in my ribs that I cannot breathe. So at 9 o'clock, I was mentally clocked out. I literally told Joseph, I said, I want to jump off this building. And at that point, he was like, he left the room and he went to go talk to my mom. And they were like, Operation Get This Girl, convince me to take some drugs. It didn't have to be the epidural, but to convince me to get something to help. Because I did not want the epidural that bad that I'd rather jump off that building. Came in and they convinced me to take Nubane. So they convinced me to take Nubane. And the nurse said, honestly, thank that nurse, because I love her so much, and I hope everybody gets a nurse like her. I'm serious. She put the bar so high. The standard, I hope I get just as good as nurse for my other babies, because I think about her every single day. That is one thing that I never thought is you grow a connection with your nurse in labor and delivery. And she was my postpartum nurse as well. But they convinced me to take Nubane, and she said that it was going to hit my head first. And she's like, it's going to act like you're drunk. And she gave that to me, and I instantly smelled the smell of alcohol, not actual alcohol, but alcohol swabs, clean alcohol. And it hit me, and I've never felt good in my life. That was some good stuff. She's smiling behind. Anyway, she said that the first dose is the best dose. So that is also the strongest. So I know you had your mom crying in labor. Yeah, you did. I was having some good dreams. I had a dream that I had the epidural and I could not feel anything. And after I woke up, and I was like, okay, we're going to take that epidural. We're going to take it. I mentally knew that this baby was not going to come out of my vagina. I knew it. So, anyway, she was still high, so high in my ribs. I could feel her. I couldn't even breathe with you in me. I couldn't. They gave me the epidural, and that was the only time I really lost my cool, was with the anesthesiologist. Yeah. By this point, my contractions were over a minute long, and I'm going to say 30 seconds in between each. They were so strong and so consistent that she didn't even come out of my vagina, and she was so bruised from my uterus contracting. Anyway, so they gave me the epidural, and I wasn't even that mean. I was just like, are you done? He would not wait in between each contraction. He was just, and you have to be hunched over, and I'm like, that, see, this is where that nurse came in. She just held me. So I was so done, and I was getting so mad. I was getting, yeah, just like you. You are right now. always said, "Are you almost done yet?" Yeah, that's gave me the epidural. I felt amazing. I'm not even gonna lie, guys, that felt so good after what I've been through. By this point, it was over 24 hours. And so they left me rest, I want to say like 2 hours. They came back in 2 hours and she checked me. And guess what? Still have not dilated anymore. Still at a whopping 3. And at this point, I was like, Mom and Joe were sleeping. I think Joe was on the side of me, actually. And I was like, I asked her, I said, so at what point are they going to call C-section? And she said, right now. She said, I'm going to go talk to her and make sure that's what she wants to do. And she left the room. I told Joe, I was like, wake up my mom. And then she came back in with the OB and they're like, yep, we're going to start a C-section. Don't be like afraid. Nothing's wrong with your baby. But when they call C-section, everything moves really fast. So, they came in and they had to change my epidural to, I think, a spinal tap, which they didn't have to poke me. That was another funny thing, is because I'm like, oh my God, does that old man have to come back in, that anesthesiologist? I said, he hates me. And the nurse was like, no, don't freak out. No, it's not him, and he does not hate you. And it was just kind of funny looking back at it now, but, so they came in, gave me a spinal tap. It was a chick this time, and she was the one in the actual C-section room, the operating room with me. She came in, they gave me more drugs, and the next thing I know that they had Joe get like all dressed up, and then you have to take off like all your piercings, and that's all I remember of that. And then they rolled me to the operating room, and I remember they were like, so what do you think it is? Your last final guess? And I said, I've always thought girl this whole time, but as soon as I got to the hospital, I'm going to say boy. 1, it was such a boy year. And 2, the nurses all referred to her as a him. Like, they always said him. So I'm like, it's got to be in my chart somewhere that it's a boy. So anyway, they rolled me to the operating room, and then they had to like pick me up and move me. And I was like, I'm so sorry, guys, because I was quite heavy. But I thought I was going to roll off that table. I'm not even kidding you, but they had me. So they moved me to the operating table, and at that point, I think they gave me something. And I was profusely gagging. I don't know what it was. So they were pumping me full of like anti-nausea, I'm assuming it was. So I could not feel them cutting me open, but I could not believe the amount of pressure you feel, like them tugging this baby out of you. It was crazy. And they let me go by myself, and then they called Joe in later. And he walked in when I was already cut open. So he was like kind of like freaked out. But the smell of the C-section room, because they burn your like skin, like I'm assuming to like stop the bleeding, but that smell was not very good, and I was puking, and so Joe was on the side of me. And when they finally took her out, and I'm like, he's staring at her, and I'm like, well, what is it, and it's a girl. And I did not believe him, because once again, everybody was saying him. So then they took the sheet down, and I got to see her, and I'm like, oh my God. Well, actually, he's like, it's a girl. I'm like, is he being serious, or is he lying to me right now? I did not believe it at all. But that she started crying, and I weighed her, and I was crying as well. We were both crying. Joe got to hold her first, and I was like, well, what the heck? And then they asked her name, and I said, Dad, this is May. They weighed her, She was 8-12. So I'm glad they took her when they did, because there was no way that if I had to wait another, I delivered at 38 weeks. So if I had to wait another 2 weeks, or at least even another week, I don't think I would have been able to push her out just because she was so big. But anyway, after that, they rolled me back into my postpartum room. And another thing that I didn't know until after is that I pretty much like hemorrhaged. I bled a lot. Like my face for the last like 2 days after C-section, I was whiter than a ghost, I think. Like it was bad. I didn't know that until my mom, because they have to do that, like, I forgot what it was called, those massages that they come and push on your uterus, and I was just bleeding so much. Like, little TMI, but I bled for like 10 weeks after birth too. It was kind of crazy, but I went in wanting unmedicated, but at the same time I was like, I surrender to the Lord. Whatever He's got for me, I will do. But I was just not prepared for a C-section because I'm absolutely terrified of surgery. Even the idea of surgery terrifies me. So at that point with her, I just knew that I was going to have a C-section. So I had hours to prepare. And I just felt like nobody listened to me. And she was so high up there. Even when that OB cut me open, she's like, oh yeah. She was not going to come out. She was so high up there. But I had to have a C-section due to failure to progress. So I don't know. I asked my OB if, like, for future babies, what does that mean? You know, like, and she said you can try for a VBAC, but more than likely you'll probably have to have another C-section if the baby is on the bigger side. But I don't know. I try not to think about it because my goal is to have a medicated birth, but at the same time, I want what's best for my baby, and I don't want my baby to get hurt. So I don't know. I think that's a decision I have to make in the future when that time comes. But I don't know. It kind of makes me sad that I don't have, like, there is a chance that I will never have an unmedicated birth, but I don't know why, but I think it's just because I hold like this such, like, it's kind of like my ego in my head that I'm like, I have to do this, so I know I'm strong, and like I don't get it. Like I always thought C-sections were an easy way out, but that I am still hurting and I'm 3 months postpartum. Like shame on me for ever thinking that, to be honest, but I don't know. I wasn't prepared to have a C-section. And if you've had a C-section due to failure to progress and you had a baby after, what was the outcome? Did you have to have another C-section, or did you go into, were you able to progress, like, and have a VBAC? I don't know. Like, you need to, I don't know. To be honest, I don't even want to put it in the comments, but I try not to think about it because it doesn't matter at this moment. But not to scare anybody, but that was my story. Don't let it scare you, because I still want another baby and I still want to do it again. I miss that experience so much, even though I was in the worst pain of my life. That doesn't make sense, but it brought me the most beautiful baby, so I'll do it again in a heartbeat. So that was my birth story. If you enjoyed it, give a thumbs up, subscribe, but I hope this doesn't traumatize anybody else. Don't be traumatized. I missed it. I totally missed my labor, and I wish I could go back, but that's so dumb to say. But anyway, have a great day. I love you guys. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.